Yeah, so when it comes to risk, there are three key components that we should always have in mind from a business and investment perspective. One is that risk is actually subjective. So it means there's no objective metric to say this is risky or not risky. It's subjective in the sense that it's based on the individual. It's based on what risk means to them and what their risk tolerance is. So let's say, for example, we both have 100,000 and there's a potential investment opportunity. Now, I might be in a position where 100,000 is money I'm willing to lose in relation to the level of return that this potential venture can offer. You might have that same 100,000, but that's 100,000.
Hello. Welcome to the Great Return Podcast, where we have conversations focused on wealth creation, rooted in African development, for and by people of African heritage, both at home and abroad. Today, we are discussing the risks and challenges of doing business in Ghana as a diasporan. And for that conversation, we have invited back our very own Ajegowe Chanayere, aka AG. Welcome, AG.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you again. So, I'd like us to start our first session by looking at how we should understand risk as aspiring diaspora entrepreneurs, especially within the context of business and investments. So, what do you think of that, AJ?
Yeah, so when it comes to risk, there are three key components that we should always have in mind from a business and investment perspective. One is that risk is actually subjective. So it means there's no objective metric to say this is risky or not risky. It's subjective in the sense that it's based on the individual. It's based on what risk means to them and what their risk tolerance is. So let's say, for example, we both have 100,000 and there's a potential investment opportunity. Now, I might be in a position where 100,000 is money I'm willing to lose in relation to the level of return that this potential venture can offer. You might have that same 100,000, but that's 100,000. That is not money you can afford to lose.
Yeah.
Even if we are both in a situation where objectively, financially, we can both lose that 100,000, my risk appetite and your risk appetite is not the same. So that is where the subjective component comes into, because we have different risk tolerances. And ultimately, it's all about what you're willing to be able to lose. It's not really the figure itself. That's one major aspect to risk.
Okay.
The other really important aspect to risk is that it's relational and relative, in the sense that we can't really understand whether something is risky or not unless we're comparing it to alternatives.
Yeah.
For the purposes of our discussion, we are looking at business and investment risk, and we have to compare a place like Ghana and Africa which falls under the category of a developing country, to the West and the developed parts of the world. And through looking at things from that comparative analysis, it allows us to assess the risk when we're comparing the two. So you can't really understand risk unless you're basically comparing two things. Okay. So in our context, it's about looking at the developed countries versus developing countries like Ghana. And yes, at the basis, a country like Ghana compared to a place like the UK from a business and investment standpoint is is way riskier.
Yeah.
But it also follows on to the third aspect of how we understand risk, because there's always a big correlation between the level of risk and the level of return you can expect.
Okay.
So whilst the West might be less riskier than Africa,
Yeah.
the West doesn't really offer that attractive returns, whereas Africa is more riskier
Yeah.
for business and investment than the West.
Yeah.
But Africa does offer very, very, very high attractive returns.
Right.
So in general, that is how we should look at risk from a business and investment standpoint.
Okay. So what you're saying is when we're looking at risk, first we need to look at our own individual relationship with risk, if you like. Because what we might see as very risky to somebody else might not be as risky, depending on what the investment means to us and to our lives as at that point in time. Also, risk is relative in that you should always compare different businesses and the potential risk they offer, and compared to what returns they're giving you. And lastly, we should always do it in relation to where we are talking about. We are talking about Africa, a developing economy, versus maybe the developed economy. So we should always have those things in mind when we are thinking of risk.
And the final thing, just to add on that, is the ultimate goal is for us to find an investment where we have maximized the returns and have limited the risks. So ultimately, that's the perfect equilibrium.
Okay.
We should seek out investment opportunities that offer us the highest return at the lowest risk possible.
Okay.
Going back to why risk is comparative, it's not just about looking at businesses and comparing different business opportunities, but it's looking at economies. And when you want to invest in an economy, why should diasporans, whilst Africa might be risky, why should they still seriously consider Africa as an investment destination compared to the West?
Yeah.
You see, so it's within that whole context.
Yeah. Okay. So, as aspiring diaspora entrepreneurs, what should we do about risk? That is, if there are business risks, does that mean we should not start a business or make a particular investment? Or are we supposed to approach business risk from a different standpoint?
Yeah, so again, laying the foundations of how we should understand risk. The conclusion we should all draw, which I spoke about it earlier a little bit, was we are trying to find the equilibrium between the highest amount of return and the lowest amount of risk possible. And for us to achieve that, this is where risk mitigation comes in.
Right.
Because just because you can identify potential risks in any business venture, or even if you're investing in a company, the question is, can I mitigate as much of those risks as possible?
Yeah.
So we shouldn't be put off by risk. We should understand that we're meant to identify the risk and mitigate as much as possible. But fundamentally, we are trying to strike an equilibrium between risk and return. So by mitigating as much risk as possible, what we are then doing is protecting the downside, but at the same time, making the upside unlimited.
Okay.
So that is how we should approach how we deal with risk, not something to run away from, not something for it to be put off from, but it's about how do we strike that equilibrium of maximizing returns and minimizing risk as much as possible.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is in terms of business and investments, I believe there are always risks in almost everything you do in life, but especially when you're going to spend money with the hope of achieving more money back. you should always sort of accept that there are risks, but also be really you need to find, whatever you're doing, you need to find out what the risks are. You don't want to be caught blindsided. You want to find what the risks are, like we're saying, and then you want to work on, okay, how do I either eliminate or reduce that risk to an acceptable level where I can still invest or do that business. So we'll talk a lot more about different risks and things to do in mitigating those risks later. But I want us to look in this second section, the ease of doing business in Ghana. So the most recent World Bank ranking on the ease of doing business, Ghana ranks 118th out of 190 countries. However, Ghana was the third best in West Africa. So what is the significance of this ranking by the World Bank?
Yeah, so first of all, again, how this all links into risk is ultimately we're asking ourselves, is Ghana an easy place to do business? Mm-hmm. But again, from the conversation we've already had, that can't be understood in isolation.
No.
So yes, if you look at the global world and you compare Ghana to developed countries, mm-hmm. yes, the ease of doing business here in Ghana is a lot harder than, if you were in like a place like Singapore. I think Singapore's ranked number 1.
Right.
You see, but when you compare Ghana within the context of Africa and in the West African region, then you realize that if we are serious diaspora entrepreneurs and investors, and we know that Africa is the next major growth region of the world, the next question we're asking ourselves is, which country, which economy is the best place for me to be making my investments and doing business? And within that contextual framework of Africa, Ghana is very much leading the way. And what makes Ghana attractive from an ease of doing business standpoint compared to other markets like Kenya, South Africa, and these kinds of places, is that Ghana is putting in place some kind of infrastructure specifically to support diaspora, mm-hmm. the diasporans. Mm-hmm. Whereas unfortunately, if you go to some of the attractive investment destinations, that infrastructure doesn't exist. I mean, even here in Ghana, it's already very challenging navigating the environment.
Yeah.
Especially if you're a diasporan and if you don't have any local networks and connections, you don't understand the culture very well, all those kind of things. Mm-hmm. But imagine you're trying to, yes, from various metrics standpoint, Kenya is a great place to go. South Africa is a great place to go. Mm-hmm. You see, Botswana is a great place to go. But as a diasporan, so you're not going in as a large multinational or a large venture capital or sovereign wealth fund.
Yeah.
It's mainly, most people, it's them.
Yes.
Can you navigate those environments mm-hmm. easily mm-hmm. without some kind of infrastructure in place? Mm-hmm. And when you compare these markets to Ghana, you realize that whilst there are still a lot of challenges in Ghana, at the public and private levels, significant steps have been made mm-hmm. to make it increasingly more easy for mm-hmm. diasporans to do business and invest. I mean, that is the essence of what TG Africa is about, because in a way we try to make ourselves the bridge between the diaspora and Ghana. Yeah. Whether people are trying to start businesses here or if people are looking more from an investment standpoint. Mm-hmm. So that is what, whilst the ranking looks very low, again, we have to remind ourselves that we should always expect that in a developing economy, it's not just Ghana, wherever in the world, if it fits that category, the ease of doing business will be challenging. Mm-hmm. But if we understand that whilst this is the case, and we know that there's a positive correlation between the level of return you can get and the amount of risk you're willing to take, Africa is way more attractive than the West.
Yeah.
And then finally, focusing on Ghana. Ghana is one of the more attractive destinations where the risk profile is suitable for business and investment, specifically from a diasporan perspective.
Yeah. So for me as well, I think we need to look into risk, but we can't be put off when it comes to doing business in Africa or doing business in Ghana or investing in Ghana because of risk. A typical example on the ground is, so myself and my husband, we own a poultry farm. And I'm giving this example to show that sometimes you can look into risk, you can try to find out what the risks are and mitigate against them. But other times, so you won't be able to get all of that and you won't be able to mitigate all of that. But it doesn't mean that you can't. You can still do that. So part of the poultry farm, the main part when it comes to marketing is distribution. So we got a forerunner, which I was able to be using that both for personal use and for distributing the eggs, because we used to do them just twice a week. And then this forerunner had an accident. Somebody ran into us, and the whole one side of it got bashed in quite badly. So that I couldn't use for a while. So I then decided, well, it's about time we had a distribution truck. So everything we had, let's go and get a small mini truck. One of these in Ghana, they call them Aboso Kai Macho. We got that. Initially had to spend quite a bit of money up and down trying to do it to the standard that we wanted. And then we started using it. I think 2 to 3 days after we spent all that money bringing it, again, another accident. And that one is now sat at the police station where they are also pulling things here and there. I don't know why, but I have no mini truck again. However, we're still going on. So now I'm hiring a truck once a week, and I've put everybody together and is doing the distribution once a week. It's tough. It means at the minute I'm not making anything. However, the main thing is to see the business through this hard period, and then it will be fine. So what I'm saying is, regardless of whatever we think, Ghanaians are doing businesses here. Locals are doing businesses here. They are managing to get on. So these are some of the things that I think is important to always have at the back of your mind, that yes, we are saying you need to assess the risks. You need to look into things and try and mitigate risk. But it should never put you off doing business, because the returns would far outweigh any risk that comes your way. And with resilience, that people are, it's a developing country. So it offers higher returns, and therefore you face bigger challenges and risk, but you can manage them. You can really manage them.
Yeah. I mean, like a perfect example is, for example, let's look at like the stock markets in general. Mm-hmm. So right now, OpenAI and companies like that, their valuations are very high. Mm-hmm. But if you compare a company like OpenAI from an investment standpoint to, let's say, a company like BP or Shell, a company that's existed for 50, 60 plus years. From an investment standpoint, investing in OpenAI or like in Nvidia, for example, it's extremely risky compared to putting your money into Shell or BP.
Okay, yeah.
But why is it that the share price of OpenAI and all these kind of companies are so high? It's because the market has decided that, yes, this is still new ventures. The AI market is still new, but they see the upside is extremely high. Mm-hmm. So whatever risk they're taking on, the upside far outweighs it.
Exactly.
So the big question that you ask yourself is, what is my risk tolerance? That's more the main thing. It's not about not taking risk or being put off by risk in Africa. Is what is my level of risk tolerance? Because and your risk tolerance in a simple terms is how much am I willing to lose?
Yeah.
Once you answer that question for yourself, then you vet opportunities based on that notion.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we now move into our third section, which is the main section. In this section, we're going to look at the risks and challenges of doing business in Ghana, and also talk about risk mitigating strategies to use to overcome them. So our team at TGR Africa have compiled a list that I want us to go through and talk both about the risk and about the mitigating factor, how to mitigate against that particular risk. So I'd like us to start with low contract enforcement. In Ghana, we would say we have low, in terms of contracts, you can have a contract in place, but often we find that the actual enforcement of contracts are quite low. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a major risk that anyone that is seriously considering Ghana as an investment destination should really take into consideration, because whilst we have an economy, whilst the world has an economy, we have free markets, all those kind of things, it still needs certain rules and it still needs mechanisms in place to protect and to force certain kind of behaviors. It's very important in business that accountability is there, and trust is the glue that actually holds up an economy. And when you have weak contract enforcement, it's a really big problem because there's no accountability. If me and you go into a partnership, if you're my supplier or my distributor or whatever, and we have come to an agreement, contractually, both our parties have looked at it, and there are expectations that you have of me, and there are expectations that I have of you. And this is all being factored into our overall business analysis. If you don't hold up your end and there are no consequences that you know you will face, then where is the incentive for you to hold up your end?
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately, a lot of us diasporans, we come here and we project our experience in the West here in Africa because we assume that the markets function the same way, because a lot of us don't. I mean, people in the West go on holiday. They visit Asia, Africa, wherever. But most people don't go abroad to experience the actual economy.
Yeah.
So we tend to assume that all economies function the same. So if we grow up in a Western economy, we think that in Ghana, for the most part, it seems on the surface, at least, they have the structures in place.
Yeah.
But yes, here you can sign a contract. It's great. You've got your lawyer, this, that, and a third. But if things happen and breaches have taken place, how strong is the legal system to be able to actually hold the parties accountable? And that is a major risk to accept, because if you don't, if that's not always guaranteed, then it completely disrupts your capacity to plan. It completely disturbs predictability and stability, which are very important for a business. So people definitely need to know that contract enforcement here is an issue. Again, within a context of Africa, Ghana's legal system is a lot more developed, a lot more robust than most African countries. But from a Western standpoint, you need to come in with a mindset knowing that the level of protection you have is not as
great.
Yes.
From my observation, both in the UK and here, I would say don't be put off by it, because in the UK, there are contracts and all of that. But even in the UK, I find that you have all these things in place. But when people breach these contracts, you first have to ask yourself, because there's a cost implication. And I think that's the major problem in Ghana. For you to enforce that, you probably need to possibly take it to court in one way or the other. And then you'll find that even in the UK, the cost of actually legal support to do these things is quite high. So even for a lot of businesses within a certain level, they don't bother. Unless it is a lot of money before they will then actually see these things through in court. And I think in Ghana it's exactly the same thing, because in Ghana, taking a lawyer to look at potentially taking something to court costs a lot of money, and that's why people don't follow it up. But let's say you have a business and there's a contract which the breach would cost you a lot of money. You can actually still see through the courts, and the courts work just like they work abroad. So you will get there, but you will have to spend a lot of money first, and then eventually maybe you can get that cost reimbursed. Not always, or if you lose the case, it means that there's even more cost for you. So I'll say that in Ghana, you just have to be prepared for certain contracts. How do I say, for losing money when it comes to certain contracts. So you need to look at the level that you're losing if there are any breaches before you decide whether to take it up or not to take it up. Often there's no point taking it up. So
but across the board, what I'll also add is that it's not the fact that the law would be enforced, which is the issue, which is the main issue.
Yeah.
Which isn't actually the main issue.
No.
The main thing is the time frame.
Yeah.
And business timing is very critical. Where the West has an advantage when it comes to contract enforcement is that within a relatively decent time frame, decisions can be made.
Yes.
In Ghana, there are cases that are still going on 7 years ago.
Exactly, yeah.
You see, so that is why that is an issue. And people just need to have that in mind.
Yeah. Okay, so we've now talked about the contract, the low contract enforcement risk. What mitigating strategies can people use when it comes to this particular risk?
Well, again, it goes back to diaspora support services. It goes back to how easy is it for a diasporan entrepreneur to do business in Ghana compared to other African economies? And one of the biggest ways to address these things is to make sure that you are working with an organization like TG Africa. Because why is that a risk mitigation strategy? Because we have spent the time and effort to do the due diligence, to form the right kind of relationships with the right type of organizations, so that when someone has particular business or investment needs, that screening process has already been done.
Yeah. Secondly,
if you are not going to work with an organization like ours, then you have to invest in your due diligence process.
Yeah.
This company I'm doing business is, what's their track record?
Yeah.
What have previous customers, clients, suppliers, distributors said about them?
Yeah.
And finally as well, when you're structuring a contract with someone, is it a situation where there is mutually assured destruction? In the sense that, would there be significant repercussions on their side if they don't hold up on their end? Because the way the deal is structured, they have skin in the game.
Yeah.
And Yes, I think in general, these are some of the most important things to look at. It's the best, personally, I would recommend is to work with local, specifically diaspora-led organizations that have the relationships, because a lot of the screening has already been done.
Yeah.
But on a personal level, you really need to be considering the type of deals you're structuring. You need to be considering the individual you're doing the deal with.
Yeah.
You need to look at their track record and their reputation as a whole and take that very seriously. And if you can't gather data about that, I wouldn't personally recommend doing business with whether it's a person or an individual, because you've left that gap open.
Yeah.
And again, if it's small amounts of investments, yes, we can walk away. But potentially we're talking about making investments 100K plus. That's not money you can just walk away from.
Yeah. So, I'd like us to move on to the next risk factor that we've identified: price fluctuations, and also the fact that prices can be quite high, and then if they tend to fluctuate as well, it becomes an issue for businesses, especially new businesses.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that I've observed about the Ghanaian economy, but I think it's true across the developed world, well, particularly in Africa, is there's no real price system.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is pricing strategy is primarily based on how people feel.
Yeah.
So this vendor here and that vendor here, they're not selling things based on what they think the market rate is and considering demand supply tensions and all those kind of pricing factors that you go to evaluate what you should sell something at. It's based on what I feel like I want to make from what I'm selling.
Yeah.
And what that creates is this lack of clarity as to whether you're paying the right amount for something or whether you're being overcharged.
Yeah.
So you can't just assume where you're buying, where you're shopping is that represents what it is that you should be paying. And that's a real problem, because especially for diasporans, because with the lack of this kind of local understanding that in Ghana, you really have to shop around.
Yeah.
You really have to know
Very
where
much
to
so.
go for what types of things.
Yeah.
Both on a personal level and also at a business level.
Yeah.
And if you don't come in with this kind of understanding that this is a potential challenge and a risk, then you can be charged significant amounts, especially the fact that people would assume that you're coming from abroad, so you have money.
Yeah, indeed.
So that's something that people need to bear in mind, that there are no stable or there are no kind of there are no stable prices anywhere.
Yeah.
The same thing you buy in this place, literally next door, it could be 10 times the price.
Yeah. That's the crazy side of it.
I told the story of how for that Belacqua bottle of water, the people who carry it on their heads, it's like 5 cities.
Yeah.
But I've been in restaurants where I've bought that same bottle of water for 120 cedis.
Yeah. Crazy.
So if you ask yourself, where's the logic?
Well, yeah.
Where that restaurant I went to, what thought patterns, what considerations were they using to determine that they should be selling Belacqua for 120 cedis? And at the same time, to the woman that's carrying water on her head, she's selling it at 5 cedis. So there's quite a big range. But somehow both parties must be making money or not making money. This is just a simple example. So now let's expand that to you're starting a business. Imagine there's a lot of different inputs that you have to purchase and all that kind of thing. If you don't know how to shop around, if you don't know how to find the right places, then you'll be in a situation like I've just highlighted at a business level, and that's high cost.
And the thing is, even in terms of just going and paying the prices, those prices that the people are giving you, whether it is because that's what they are selling it at, or because they've seen you and they're thinking, oh yeah, I can say this much and you'll be able to pay, because it's like we're saying, they can tell you are coming from abroad. But we shouldn't also forget that there are actually people out there that will easily scam you as well. So even people that you're doing business with, you can end up realizing that you've paid maybe 100, sometimes 1,000 times the price that you should have paid for something. So you really need to, especially when it comes to business. Home, maybe you buy things once a while. But for a business input, you really need to do your shopping around. And then I suppose that becomes one of the strategies, the mitigating strategies when it comes to the pricing of things and what we pay for things. Are there other mitigating strategies that you can think of?
I mean, I think what's particularly helpful is one thing we should all be investing in continuously is our support networks that we build for ourselves.
Yeah.
Some of us have deep ties here, so we can leverage our family networks and their networks, whereas some of us don't. And for those of us that don't have strong networks and ties here, it's very important that we are investing in joining certain diaspora networks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or creating our own, because what I'm seeing is the power in being able to share knowledge.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the time it's somebody asking, oh, where can I go and do this? Where can I go and do that?
Where can I find this?
Yes. And all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But if you don't invest in building a strong network or joining networks of like-minded people that are doing what you're doing business and investing, then that's what makes it difficult. That's where you can be exposed to scams and being overcharged.
Yeah.
But if you're getting recommendations from places to go based off people who are like you, who have used those services, that significantly reduces risk as well.
Yeah. The other thing I'd like us to talk about is currency instability. So, I mean, recently, Ghana has sort of managed to stabilize the exchange rates. But we've had times in the past when even within a week, you're looking at, I mean, such a difference in the currency rates. So what are the risks? What risk does unstable currency bring to a business or an investment?
I think the big one is planning, future planning.
Yes.
And in business, if you can't plan for the future, if there's no security, then forecasting goes out the window, access to credit goes out the window, and really and truly business confidence is very low because everyone is on edge.
Yeah.
And that's a really big problem, you know, and a lot of it comes from sort of the currency instability. I think as a general rule, though, again, going back to the fact that risk is both is comparative. Yes, the West provides more stable currencies. You know, we say the US dollars are hard currencies, the world reserve currency, with the euro and the pound pretty stable. Developing economies, a lot of developing economies are extremely import dependent.
Yeah.
It's not just in Ghana, it's across Africa, it's across South America, even in Asia.
Yeah.
Which means they're very much exposed to commodity fluctuations. And in general, whenever there's any kind of global macro crisis, international capital always moves to safe havens. Yeah. And a safe haven is basically the West. So if you look at what happened in COVID, if you look at what happened in the Russia-Ukraine crisis. Yeah. In fact, in the financial markets, it's like a given that you will make a lot of money if I know that COVID has happened or whatever global macroeconomic situation. There's always a strong correlation between capital flight from developing economies to developed economies. Okay. Because it's a lot safer to have your money in US, Europe, UK assets and currencies than to have them in a developing economy. Yeah. And that's the pattern you always see.
Yeah.
But this is something that it's not a a uniquely Ghana situation.
Okay.
It's a general risk factor associated with investing in a developing economy. But yes, it's extremely important to know these things. Particularly if you're going to start a business where it's very import dependent, in a sense that your inputs, your operational inputs that you need to run your business. If a lot of the raw materials, machinery or whatever is coming from outside, then that is a really big problem because it basically means it will be extremely difficult for you to manage your cash flows, to effectively plan for the future and all those kind of things. And that's why people should be aware that in general, and not just a uniquely Ghanaian problem, but again, if we do a comparative analysis, actually in Africa, Ghana's currency, the cedi, is one of the strongest ones.
It is, yeah.
So yes,
actually.
Again, if you want to invest in Africa, yes, Africa, from a comparison to the West, has a lot of currency instability issues.
Yeah.
But within Africa, why should you invest and focus? And if you want to mitigate against the risk, one of the things is looking at a place like Ghana, because actually Ghana's currency, I think, is the third or fourth strongest. Yeah. It's stronger than South Africa's. And South Africa's economy is bigger than Ghana's. Is stronger than the Naira, the Nigerian currency, but the Nigerian economy is bigger than Ghana. Yeah. So that's why currency risk is an important thing to take into consideration.
I mean, the thing is, currency changes, they do affect the Ghanaian economy, most African economies tremendously, because a lot of us are import dependent, like you say. But like I always say, we shouldn't forget that there are people actually here still doing business, and you will find a way. Once you're doing business, when things happen, you reassess, see what to do, and then you move on. So I do think that part of it is knowing that business is always about pivoting as well, changing the way you do things if need be. And that is something to always bear in mind, that yes, maybe you use a lot of imports, and when situations change, you can also relook at it. I mean, what are the strategies that you think people can use to manage currency instability?
Well, I think there's three key ways to approach it. I'll say the first thing is actually what kind of business you choose to start or invest in here in Ghana. Yeah. It will be wise to focus on particular business ventures which are not, the raw materials are not very dependent on imports. Yeah. So if you're going to start a business and you're particularly concerned about currency instability, I would advise to try and start a business where 75% of your inputs can be sourced from the local economy itself. Yeah. If that is the case for you, then whether the city is up or down, at least on a business level, it's not as impactful. This should also allow your cash flows to be a lot more stable, because you know what the prices are going to be. Yeah. And you can plan a lot better. I would also say the other thing to do is to actually look at starting businesses that are export oriented. Okay. The reason I say that is because the greatest advantage of a weak and unstable currency is that most of the time it goes down than it goes up. And to be competitive internationally, it's all about whether you can offer the same quality of goods, of products, but is it cheaper? Yeah. China built its entire economy based on having a weak currency, basically. Yeah. And up to now, China still manipulates its currency just to keep it weak on purpose. And this is something we never talk about. we shouldn't really be looking for a strong city.
Yeah.
We're not at the stage of our development which makes sense to have a strong city.
Yeah.
In fact, if you look at the reason why we have a strong city, it's really just based on financial manipulation.
Yeah.
Mainly at the government level and the central bank level.
Yeah.
But it's not actually sustainable, because on one level, what the Bank of Ghana has done is they've used reserves to basically prop up the city. And then simultaneously, the government has made gold to be sold in cities. Now, it just so happens to be that gold is at an all-time high.
Yeah.
In the commodities markets because of fears of inflation, the fall of the dollar, and the general macroeconomic environment. There's always a high correlation between when there's high inflation and gold prices, because gold was used as a form of money.
Yeah.
So gold in financial markets has always been a protection against inflation. And that is one of the two driving factors why Ghana's currency is strong. But
yeah.
I don't think people should expect this stability to be a long-term thing. It's artificially generated. It's not because Ghana's economy has reached a level of development where it's strong because people are demanding stuff from Ghana.
Yeah.
But factoring that in mind, people shouldn't be planning and making business and investment decisions based on expecting the current rate to stay as it is.
Yeah.
Or thinking that Ghana's currency is stable. And the best two ways, again, like I was saying, to protect against them is focus on businesses where you can source out what you need locally for the most part.
Yeah.
And also focus on export-oriented businesses, because actually it's more guaranteed that the city will fall than rise. And anytime the city falls, your revenues will shoot up.
Yeah. Yeah.
You see, so even amongst policy circles, it's very much a hot topic. Is it really good to have a strong city in this current situation?
It's important to have a stable currency, I think, but a very strong currency for a developing economy is actually not the best. But regardless of all of that, I also believe that if we focus on using local inputs and pushing and doing exports, that again helps Ghana, helps Africa, because it helps us develop, because potentially we are increasing our GDP. So even apart from the sort of risk we are talking about on the part of looking at what do we do to support Africa grow, it is let's use our inputs, let's do value addition.
And let's leverage a weak currency.
Exactly. So,
another thing, sorry, to just add to the final aspect of how to mitigate against currency instability is to do like what most developing countries do at the national level. Have currency reserves.
Yes, yeah.
You see, it's always good to have some kind of foreign exchange currency reserves in your bank account.
Yeah.
And not have all your money in cities, because the main problem is when the city falls.
Yeah.
You're now trying to buy dollars.
Yes.
You're now trying to buy euros or whatever. But if you have currency reserves and you approach the way your financial management, just like how nation states try to do, then that's also a very effective way.
Yeah, to manage currency instability. Okay, so I'd like us to move on to Low Human Development Index. What are the risks when it comes to human capital?
Yeah,
businesses and investments here.
We often say Africa has a young population and it's growing, and some economists recently did an analysis looking at the East Asia miracle, and they were trying to identify what they think the main factor that allowed them to develop was. And there's the belief that it was because they leveraged their young population. And recently at the World Economic Forum, there were discussions. I think the president of Sierra Leone was talking about the young population Africa has, but he highlighted something very important, and he said that, yes, we have a young population, but what is the quality of
Exactly, yes.
what is the quality of the population we have? Are they actually capable of helping build and develop Africa?
Yeah.
And you know as well as I do, in our experience with recruitment, with even trying to work with young people, it's very clear that there's a real big standard. That the standard is just not there. And there's a lot of work to be doing.
It's a big gap.
And what makes it worse is that the educational system is not actually producing the type of young people needed in a modern economy.
Yeah.
Because we are developing in a time of rapid change, like so much change that it's hard to keep up with. China, when it was developing, the world hadn't really changed that much.
No.
You see, so even how we raise and teach children has to be completely different. We can't follow pre-existing formulas because we're entering a totally different type of world. Now, the reason why this is a major risk is because business is people.
Yes.
And if it's very difficult to find the people to do what it is you need, then you can't have a business.
Yeah.
You see, and that is the big issue, is that yes, there's a lot of ample labor. Labor is cheap here, but you really have to sift through to find quality labor.
Yeah.
So if you're coming to Ghana thinking that, because I actually made this assumption. I assumed that, there's more free education, more people going to universities.
Yeah.
There's not enough job opportunities, so there's a hungry young force ready for all these kind of things. And technically they've gone to university, so they should at least have capacities for critical thinking, problem solving, communication skills, all of that. But turns out that's not the case.
Yeah.
So yes, just trying to find the people to make your business work is itself a really big challenge.
A big challenge, yes. Most organizations have that problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I completely agree with you. We've been through it. And is very different from what you think it is. And when you start interacting and even sometimes you do interviews and you think, okay, that one sounds promising, out of so many sounds promising. You start and you realize you need to put a lot in. And if you are fortunate to get decent people who are willing to learn, then you are even in a good place. So that is a real challenge. So what can people do in terms of managing this risk that most businesses face?
Yeah, so I think the best place to start off with is to lower your expectations.
Yeah.
You see, and that's whatever you think is average or standard, assume that here, that is actually the top level.
Yeah.
You see, obviously it's not a scientific thing, but in general, really, really lower your standards.
Your expectations.
Because what your experience of average is not what average means here.
Yeah.
So with that low expectation, I think the next thing to do is to recognize that whoever you're employing, whoever you're bringing in, you really need to invest a lot in how you're training and developing them. Yeah. Don't assume that they have the capacity to actually do what it is you think they can do just because it says it on their CV or you've had a conversation with them.
Yeah.
You actually have to look at them as a blank slate. You have to make sure you develop a very clear business culture that you can train someone in your ways so that when they step into your organization, they're not in Ghana.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the challenges with our Human Development Index, it's actually from our own culture. Because a lot of our culture goes against modern economic development and business culture. For example, there is, in our culture, there's very much a thing that if someone's senior than you, like status is a big thing. So it doesn't really matter what they say, you fall in line, you pretend you agree, all that kind of thing. If you're building a startup, you need innovative ideas.
Yeah.
You need people that are going to challenge things.
Yeah.
Your employees that you're going to employ, they are not trained to think like that. They're not going to tell you the right things because culturally it's unacceptable to challenge or to criticize someone that is perceived as. But that's a huge problem. You as a diaspora, you don't know this.
Yeah.
So you don't know that this person is not telling you what they should be telling you because culturally they're not supposed to tell you because they would interpret that as being disrespectful.
Yeah.
You see, so a lot of the actual general culture is not very suitable to how the modern economy functions. So you really have to create a culture in your own workspace where people know that when you step in here, you're not in Ghana. This is our particular culture that we practice in this organization.
Yeah.
And you really have to invest in that component and realize that you have to really develop people.
Yeah.
And not just take them as face value and expect that they are capable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Regardless of what their certification says. And when we speak of Human Development Index, this is not just young people. I'm also talking that just across the board.
Yeah.
The standards are just not there yet. And in general, you should just have that as the back of your mind. Whether you're dealing with a bank, you're dealing with a government institution at all level, the human capital is not developed to the standard that you will be used to. But once again, within a context of Africa, where is Ghana in the context? Ghana, from a Human Development Index, has made very significant and positive strides in improving that aspect compared to most African countries.
Yeah.
So yes, again, going back to why risk is comparative, within an African context, Ghana's Human Development Index is a lot stronger. And so that is a factor people should take into account as well.
Yeah. I would reiterate when it comes to staffing that you need to try and understand the culture that you're going into, because that would inform you how to relate and how to speak to your staff to get the results that you want. Like the typical example you've said there is trying to make staff understand that, yes, when I ask you a question, I actually want you to sort of give me the critical answer that I'm expecting, because I'm hiring you for a particular role. I'm hiring you because I feel I need a value. And that is the value you are actually bringing. It's not because I'm asking you, it's not a trick question where if you tell me something, it might show disrespect because you are telling me you know more than me. That's where the African culture thing comes in, because when like a younger person, you're telling an older person something which is contrary to what the older person is saying, it is seen as you feel you know more than them, the older, and that's where the disrespect bit comes in. So is to make them understand that this is, I'm taking you on board because that is the bit that I value. That you will tell me the truth.
Yes, I want you to tell me what to do. That's
exactly,
why I'm hiring you.
Exactly. So it's okay to tell me.
Yes.
And then it is the other thing that people need to understand is how you relate to your staff. And there are a lot of things that in the West is seen as acceptable, but here your staff might feel again that you are disrespecting them in the way you speak to them, because the language sometimes is not as direct as we are abroad.
Yes,
abroad we say things directly.
Yeah.
In Africa, there are a lot of nuances. So again, you need to learn how you say certain things, because it's okay to ask them to, either tell you something or do something, but the way you say it is important. So whether it's in Ghana, it is in Kenya, anywhere you are, you need to try to learn the nuances of the culture of the language so that you understand. And even in so doing, the relationship between you and your staff becomes better. So I think that's very important in managing, in managing that risk. Okay. So, I'd like us to now look at infrastructure, especially when it comes to energy and the road infrastructure. What we think that poses, what risks and challenges that might pose potential diaspora businesses and investments.
Yeah, so, I mean, overall in infrastructure, I think we're looking at energy, we're looking at transportation, we're also looking at the effectiveness of local institutions, we're looking at communications, telecommunications, and internet access and all these kinds of things.
Yeah.
All of these factors are the building blocks to creating an environment for business to thrive. Unfortunately, if your infrastructure is weak, there is always a strong positive correlation, or there's a strong correlation in general, both positively and negatively to level of infrastructure development and economic development. And yes, if we compare infrastructure from a African perspective vis-a-vis a Western perspective, then yes, they are worlds apart.
Yeah.
You can't even compare, really. So yes, in that essence, infrastructure is very much a big issue across all the African nations.
Yeah.
Once again, though, Ghana is one of the countries that its infrastructure is at least, like, you can work with it. It's one of the few countries where you can work with it. But the main reason why it's a problem is because, like I said, if you're trying to start a business and let's say you're in farming and you're mainly doing it in the eastern region or the northern region and your goods are meant to be coming to Accra.
Yeah.
If you're coming to invest in Ghana, you want to go in the agri-space or whatever, and you haven't considered the fact that transportation, roads are an issue, you haven't factored that into your analysis, then you are exposed to all sorts. First of all, you can't really budget properly because you're not considering the wear and tear. You're not even considering whether you can even get your produce where you need to get your produce.
Yeah.
And that's a very big problem because you see, a lot of the time when we live in the West, because the infrastructure is developed, sometimes you don't even consider, oh, my business can't actually exist until this thing also exists.
Yeah. And
when we project and we assume that, oh, well, they must have roads and transport, so it's not even something I'm going to think about. You see, if you don't consider that energy is very unstable across Africa in general.
Yeah.
Energy is very unstable.
And expensive.
And the truth is, you can't actually run a sustainable business if you don't have sustainable access to energy.
Yeah.
Now that poses a question because different businesses' energy consumption is greater and lesser than others. Now, how does that affect your valuations and how you're forecasting future operational expenses? How are you considering those things if you don't take that aspect seriously?
Yeah.
Because actually, if your margins are within a certain range, but energy consumption and its expense and its instability actually far exceeds that margin range, then you can't have a viable business.
No.
So going into how do we address some of these risk mitigation aspects, I think the first thing you should ask yourself is the infrastructure in place for my business to even exist?
Yeah.
If my business will be dependent on a lot of transportation, road access, if my business might be really dependent on high energy consumption, if my business requires very good access to internet connectivity, like if you're going to start a tech company here in Africa, it's really important you consider where
you're citing your things.
Whether you're going to have reliable access to internet at a good speed to make your thing work.
Yeah.
So I think when it comes to risk mitigation for the infrastructure risk is to first identify that. And it actually leads overall into, I think in general, it's all about your feasibility studies.
Yeah.
This is a part you have to consider in your feasibility studies.
Yeah.
And it falls on the timing. Is the economy ready for my idea to exist? Because the basic requirements to make it work is there. And if it's not, can you include that into your analysis, and does that still make your business work or not?
Yeah.
So for that one, yes, I definitely think the risk mitigation strategy comes in the level of investment you make in the market intelligence you're gathering.
Yeah.
About whether there's actually the infrastructure you need to make. Don't assume it is there. And don't assume that it's in the sufficient level of quality or quantity either.
Yeah. And when it comes to infrastructure, I'll say when you are doing feasibility studies, it is very important that I'll say if you can use a local organization to do that, because these are some of the nuances that they will understand, that if you use an organization that is not local, might not see, they might just take transportation costs is X. And that might not be the real, because, even traveling from here to say Kumasi, sometimes can take a whole day, but it's not supposed to, because of the state of the road sometimes. So, and then when you're doing, for doing business in Ghana as well, often, you need to be able to visit your site enough. And this is again something that people won't take into account. Before we came and started some of the businesses that we're doing, that wasn't something that was major in my mind, because I was like, I'm not going to be the one physically doing the work. And so until we actually started the businesses and we realized how much you need to have oversight over your business, and therefore you need to think, one, about your own travel up and down. But also, when we talk of infrastructure, is like you're saying, if you need whatever you're doing, it needs to travel. Don't just think about it as, there are trucks and, travel is expensive. It can be time consuming. So these are things that you really need to put more thought into when in the planning stage, to make sure that you are putting the right cost in. For instance, is it more beneficial for you to look at solar energy completely, cut off the grid, depending on where you are? And maybe initially that might seem like, that's too much cost. But then if you actually do your feasibility studies right, sometimes it actually comes out that maybe you just need to delay your project a little bit and get the money and do that, because in the long run, that actually will save you so much hassle and save you so much money that it even makes you more profitable than you think. The same thing goes to this. If we had known what we know, one of the things I would have made sure that we had before we started the farm was a borehole. I would have made sure we hesitated, looked for money for borehole. That would have saved us. Having a borehole and having a treatment of the water would have saved us so much money. And also, I would have made sure that we invested in trucks. We invested in a good distribution truck, ideally a hybrid that would help with the cost of fuel. These are things I'm saying in hindsight, and now that's the plan in trying to find money. But once you are up and running, it becomes more difficult to actually put a whole bunch of money aside just for that. So when it comes to those, will be my mitigating things to look at. Can you sort of hold off and actually do things differently at the initial at the initial stages. So again, all of this is not to put you off, but it's to make you think differently.
Yes, definitely.
So I'd now like us to look at supply and value chain gaps that might exist.
I mean, that links very closely to infrastructure.
Exactly.
One thing that I've come to notice, which I think we should all, as entrepreneurs and investors, understand about developing economies of Africa and looking at a place like Ghana is developing. So most of its sectors are quite wide open. I mean, the government has apparently been trying with agriculture for a long period of time, but if you look at the agricultural sector, for example, there's gaps everywhere.
Yeah.
Why this is important, why this poses a big problem, again, tying to infrastructure, is it actually means that sometimes, and most of the time, you can't start your business in isolation.
Mm-hmm.
You might have to start the business and include other levels of the value chain because it may not exist.
Mm-hmm.
For example, transportation is a big gap in agriculture. Like there's a lot of produce that just can't get to market because the transportation infrastructure. Mm-hmm. I'm not even talking road. I'm just talking like there just being enough logistic companies that can get your goods from A to B safely and effectively. Mm-hmm. There's a whole gap there. There's a whole gap in storage, post-harvest losses, and all those kind of things. So the main point I'm saying is sometimes you actually have to assess the entire value chain, supply chain, and ask yourself, are there actors in different levels at different stages that I can plug myself into? Mm-hmm. But if you just assume, because in the West, we can easily assume, I don't really have to think too hard that, there's probably a trucking company.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the economy is so developed.
Yeah.
The big difference, I think we should all compare developed economy to a developing economy. And actually, again, the trade-off between risk and return is, if you're in England, every good idea has been done.
Yeah.
Industries are really mature. Mm-hmm. All the value chains, supply chains, the ecosystem is well structured. Mm-hmm. But that means that the risks of doing business there is very low.
Yeah.
But the returns is not really there. Like, it's actually hard to enter a market.
Yeah.
Because there are already well-established brands and companies. So, nowadays, that's why the trend is disruption. Mm-hmm. You see. But you look at Africa's case, okay, the sectors are not that developed. Mm-hmm. So it's a wide gap. So it makes it risky because it means that if I start my business, but there is this other component not there to carry it ongoing, then I might not even have enough money to fill that gap.
Yes,
you see. So, but again, that's where the returns come in is high. So sometimes what you think your model is will have to evolve because it might have to consider other parts of the value chain to make it work. Mm-hmm. And if you don't factor these things in, you may not have the operational capital needed to start.
No.
But you might have assumed, I just need 100, 200K.
Yeah.
But actually, you need 400K.
Yeah. Yeah.
You see, that's where it becomes a real issue.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think people too, once they start looking into things, is this, especially in sort of value chain as opposed to raw material. So whether it's in agric, whether it's actually food production or anything else, how do I say, even within the value chain, your initial approach would have been, I want to produce, I don't know, say maize, right? And then you're thinking, where you are, transportation, it might be a problem. You can equally look at the transportation of maize, or you can even look at other things to do within that same value, the drying of maize, storage of maize to then sell in the lean seeds. There's so many gaps, within the economic, production framework that you can start with one thing, but also open your eyes to the other things that come with that thing that in the end might actually open your eyes to something that will that you can start with and then later move into what you need, because you need that thing to be able to produce what you want to produce. But that thing is not there. Therefore, your money can't stretch enough to do both. So why don't you start with what you need first in terms of that gap, in terms of that value addition there, and then you move to eventually get to where you want to get. What I'm trying to say is, again, it's good to look at the risks, and the risks highlights issues to us, and we can work with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just going to just add, in terms of how really, again, it just comes back to when we look at how people can mitigate against this. Again, it's the level of investment in your feasibility study. And yeah, it's one of the themes that will keep cropping up, because these are the kinds of information you're supposed to get from an extensive feasibility study.
Yeah.
Because potentially that can either save you losing 100 to 200K.
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah.
And I think diasporans somehow think this step can be just skipped.
Yeah.
Or people's feasibility study is based on intuition and feeling.
Yeah.
And little bits and bobs they've read. But when you're speaking of a feasibility study, where it's the level of depth and breadth.
Yes.
And the quality of the data you're gathering and where it's coming from.
Yeah.
So that's me. I would say that is things like infrastructure, supply chain constraints. These are things you should find out first.
Yeah.
And you can find them out before you even make even one
CD worth of investment.
Whatever.
Yes. Yeah. No, definitely. We always come across people who are starting businesses and they have sort of either not done any feasibility studies, or they've done a study themselves where you can't really, when you try to talk to them, you can't really understand what they've actually put into the feasibility studies.
Yeah, a lot of time people try to make the market fit into their idea.
Exactly.
Rather than realizing your job is to fit into the market.
Yes, yeah. And a good feasibility study would help you do that.
Yes.
Yeah. The other thing is access to credit, especially local access to credit locally. But then maybe we can also talk about, is it better for you to access credits elsewhere if you can?
I mean, in general, access to credit from a local standpoint, I mean, you're doing business in Ghana, so you need to know like how easy is it to access credit, because whether we like it or not, there is a level at business development where you do need access to credit.
Yeah.
Credit is the lifeblood of any business, and most businesses wouldn't make enough profits needed to finance their growth or reach their full potential if there's not access to credit.
Yeah.
Access to credit traditionally can come from three sources. It can come from the private sector with investment funds, private equity, venture capital, or angel investors, high net worth investors deciding to invest in projects. Or it can come from government-backed initiatives, subsidies, all that kind of thing. Or it can come from banks. Problem in Africa, problem in Ghana is all these three areas are major problems.
Yeah.
If we look at private investment, it's almost non-existent.
Yeah.
Although over the past few years, we have seen signs of international capital coming in, investment funds, VCs coming in, being interested in Africa. There are platforms being built to connect angel investors with startups, SMEs, all that kind of thing. But fundamentally, if your business is something that will require that kind of financing, don't expect to be able to tap into the investment ecosystem here, because it's non-existent.
Yeah.
At the level of government, they don't have the money. Our governments are running huge deficits and are living off IMF support programs. So most of the budget it goes towards paying off interest. And whatever is left is to maintain what can be maintained.
Yeah.
So actually then having specific capital that can continuously be injected, whether it's in the form of grants or whatever, that's not something you should be dependent on. And then traditionally, I mean, people always think banks are there to support like the economy or business or whatever, but that's not really the case.
Yeah.
Commercial banking is basically the art of using money to make money.
Yeah.
And just like how we spoke about risk, commercial banks evaluate risk and return. And in the ecosystem of businesses, from an SME to a large, well-established company, first of all, a bank always sees a young company as more riskier than a mature company. Secondly, the administrative costs of managing and overseeing credit-based assets with SMEs is more costlier than lending to large institutions. What I mean by this is a bank will prefer to give 1 billion to one company than spread out 1 billion to like 100 different companies. Why? Because it costs a lot of money to watch over that credit that and it's a lot more work to be done.
Yeah.
So, and secondly, commercial banks prefer short-term lending over long-term lending because again, it's less riskier.
Yeah.
And finally, when you look at commercial banks in relation to the SME sector, there is a major financing gap. So with that in mind, and also looking at the macroeconomic environment, typically a country like Ghana is always plagued with quite high inflation. I mean, recently it's come down to single digits, but you know, historically it's always hovering around the 11, 12, going up. Yeah. You know, time ranges, which then causes banks to also have to put up high interest rates. Yes. To offset that. Yeah. And then finally, what people fail to recognize is the government is the biggest borrower in town. Yeah. Ghana's reputation internationally is not strong enough where they can raise money in international markets when and if they want, especially when they just come out of an IMF program. Yeah. So unfortunately, it's not good for the economy. But what the government has had to do is make themselves extremely attractive to the commercial banks. Yeah. What that basically has created a situation is government bonds are known as risk-free assets. Yeah. So it basically means that it's much easier for a bank to just base its loan portfolio on giving on the government than it is to invest in either individuals or businesses. And the government has made a situation worse where they still offer higher coupon payments on their interests than the private sector. Yeah. Even though they are also a risk-free they fall under the risk-free. What I'm saying is that basically, if you lend to a business, you should be getting higher interest than if you lend to the government, because the government is a safer borrower than a business. Yes. But the government is so dependent on local financing to just sustain operations that they've actually offered higher interest than what a business can offer. So the reason why you have high interest rates, high and difficult to access the capital, is a multitude of these factors. Yeah. First of all, SMEs are a lot riskier than large multinationals, so it's not in the interest from a commercial bank to even focus on that. It's also easier for them to give big amounts of money to a few than to give big amounts of money distributed to the plenty. Yeah. Thirdly, they prefer short-term financing. If you're an SME, you need long-term financing. That's not going to come from a bank because, again, it's too risky. Yeah. I know it's a lot safer for me lending for 2 years than 10 years. All sorts can happen in 10 years. Yes. And then finally, the government is the biggest borrower in town. And they offer higher attractive interest rates than the private sector is offering banks. Yeah. So all of that basically means that if you're dependent on having access to credit as a way to even keep your business going, unfortunately, that's not available here in Ghana like that.
Yeah. So then what can people do in terms of credit?
I think the biggest thing is forming investment syndicates. This is the biggest problem with how we are approaching investment and business here. We are all doing it on our own.
Yes.
I'm coming in with my 50,000, 100,000, and I think I'm going to see what I can do with that.
Yeah.
But you step into a capital intensive industry, your costs balloon.
Yeah.
You always need like more than what you think you need.
Yes, absolutely.
If you have an investment syndicate, and all I mean by that is you are raising money from your network or a group of people who are putting up the capital and you're putting it up too.
Yes.
But it's not you self-financing. What that always does is that in case of future growth, in case of access to credit, you have somewhere to tap into.
Yeah.
You see, that's the benefit of investment syndicates is because it's easier to deal with unforeseen financial needs.
Yeah.
Both in the early stages of just trying to get things going, because for most businesses, you should have in your mind that for the next 5 years, you're mainly going to be burning money.
Yeah.
So you need to be able to be in a position where financially you're able to sustain a 5-year period where you're not making any money. And the best way to do that is by being part of some kind of consortium, some kind of syndicate.
Yeah.
You see, because you can't really depend on banks.
No.
You can't really depend on venture capital because venture capital, the way venture capital is structured is the way they make their money is from being able to either sell the business onto another venture capital firm at a later stage or try and go to the public markets, the financial markets. Both these areas are not that developed in Africa.
No.
The financial markets are not developed enough for companies to be going public and then people are going to buy their shares.
Yeah.
So VC financing is very limited to very small opportunities that fit the VC model.
Yes.
You see, so you can't go to private capital for that either, and definitely rule out the government. So your only real risk mitigation strategy is to make sure, at least if you're still going to pursue things on your own, you have 3x the capital you need.
Yeah.
And secondly, you're part of some form of syndicate.
Yeah.
Both to cover unforeseen financial costs, but also to finance your long-term growth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So in terms of credit, I just want to relate a conversation I had with a friend, which I found really shocking. And this is recently, in the last, I'll say 2 months. So, I got to know that this friend actually was now working for a microfinance company, which is actually part of a bank, a whole bank, one of the major banks in the country. And in talking to him, I got really excited because it was like, the like microfinancing, they do help businesses and all that. And I was like, okay, because usually, it's not that they are not available. I know that the problem is the interest rate. So I asked him what interest rate they were charging. And then he said, I think it was 4 or 4 point something %. And I got really excited because I was thinking, that's really good. And then as we got talking, I then realized that was each month. It's not for the year.
Yeah.
So each month it's not 4 point something % for the year that roughly you pro rata to see what you're paying in. No, is whatever you owe, 4%, 4 point something % of it each month.
So
can you imagine?
It's every year.
Honestly,
how can a business survive?
Exactly.
With 48%.
Yes. Interest in a year.
In a year.
Yeah. In 2 years, you would have paid for the whole thing yourself anyway. So how do you do that? So anyway, that's by the by. It's just, I just thought of that as we were talking. So we also identify that local knowledge and local connections is a very important factor to consider, both in terms of risk and in terms of supporting your risk mitigation for your business, for your businesses. What would you like to highlight when it comes to that?
Yeah, again, you're entering an environment with high transactional costs, and the business culture here is almost polar opposite to Western business culture.
Yeah.
Again, by default, you've been exposed to one type of way of things functioning. So it's very easy for you to assume that, well, we're all living under a modern capitalist system, and on the surface, things are structured the same. But if you don't have the local understanding, or you don't factor that into your consideration, you've increased the level of risk you're taking, because things don't really work like how they work where you're coming from at all. And that can either cost you money or save you money.
Yeah.
That's why that is important. And fundamentally, the only real way to leverage against, to protect against that, is to work with local diaspora support organizations that have the understanding, the right relationships, and the right experience to guide you in business decision making.
Yeah.
That is why, we exist.
Yeah.
And it's good to see that other diaspora support organizations exist to address different aspects.
Yeah.
But yes,
it is very, very important. I have found it very valuable. Both my personal connections and also connections that I've made in sort of, once we started TGR Africa, the wider network that we have within TGR Africa, but other diasporans connections that I've made. Often you have an issue and sometimes you don't even know what to do or where to start. And then you just have a conversation with somebody and suddenly it's like, oh, they know somebody who can help you do A, B, or C. Or they even come up, why don't you try this? Or why don't you? And it is, honestly, it is, you can't, it is one of the biggest assets.
For example, like I said, beyond having your networks, but working with actual organizations.
Yeah.
It's very important because they understand who to go to,
yes,
when to go to them, and how to interpret whatever it is they are telling you.
Yeah.
And that's not something that can be taken for granted, because you are stepping into an environment where the business culture is not something you can relate to at all. Like, people would not know that, for example, locals know that if you go to a government institution, it's not like the West where, okay, you're meant to file this thing, so you hand it to them and someone will be in contact. No, you actually have to get someone to facilitate that thing for you.
Yes.
The organization is not going to automatically do it. You see,
they're supposed to, and it's just like the West. There's a route that things are supposed to take, and it should be done.
Yeah.
But locally, we all know that doesn't happen. When you hand these forms to people, often it just gets put down until you contact somebody for somebody to go and fish that form out and start pushing it through the right channels. It's not to say that every single time that happens, but it is to say that that's the reality of what often happens. So, but nobody will ever tell you this. Nobody will own up to it, because those people go to work, they get paid to do a job, which they then don't do and sit on stuff until somebody comes to give them something little to so-called encourage them to see your thing through. And it is very, very frustrating, and it shouldn't be like that. But that is the reality.
Yeah, it's like you wouldn't know, but in Ghana, you have to have a guy for everything.
Exactly.
So the benefits of working with local diaspora organization, if they have the competencies with business and investment, and that's your thing, but it can be anything else. You might just be looking to relocate.
Yeah.
You want to apply for work permits or thing. The good thing about the local diaspora organizations that have sprung up is we've all invested in having that guy in that institution to make the thing actually work.
To be able to speak to
and that's why you shouldn't take these things lightly and leverage whatever networks you have.
Yeah.
Also really seek the support of local organizations.
That's the only way to do it, really. That's the only way to mitigate that that problem of not knowing who to speak to, is having a wider network, is actually having institutions that are there to support diaspora organizations like ourselves, to support you to do that. Right. So, I mean, this next point is a point for most organizations, I think, even in the West. Complex regulatory and tax frameworks. I think this is something across board. I don't think it's any easier abroad, but only that abroad is easier to find information, it's easier to find somebody to talk to from specific government institutions who can tell you what you need to know. In Ghana, it can be like everything else we've talked about. It can be a little bit more tricky.
Yeah, I mean, regulation and legal frameworks and all that kind of thing is tricky in most parts, but place like the US, for example, they are specifically trying to create a type of environment that makes business thrive. It's part of their culture.
Yeah.
Africa took a socialist stance.
Yeah.
During the post-independence period.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone kind of tried to pivot to Russia, for example, in Nkrumah.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I'm not saying whether socialism or capitalism is possible. I'm just saying the ramifications.
Yeah.
Is that it created a situation where everything has become super centralized.
Yes.
That the right environment for business is not actually there.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult to get things through, which actually makes the ease of doing business very hard. It reduces competitiveness and it costs a lot of money as well.
Yeah. High transaction cost. Yeah. Okay. So again, in terms of the support with these regulatory and tax frameworks and institutions, it's back to the same, your local knowledge and connections. And it's back to the same of organizations that are here specifically to support diaspora individuals and businesses thrive. They will be able to find the right people to guide you, I would imagine. Finally, I want us to talk about access to information, which is more on the market intelligence bit. What are your thoughts on that? Getting the right level of information.
Yeah, again, major problem. Data gathering in Africa is not like the West. In the West, there's data gathered about almost everything. And there's where to find and access that information. With Africa, not only is data not being gathered, but where it's being kept and access is also a problem. And realistically, the only way to mitigate it again is to go through local organizations, because a company like TG Africa has made relationships with local partners.
Yeah.
Specifically, what that puts us in a unique position to do is to be able to signpost to the right places.
Yeah.
It's for us to get answers to questions that is not readily available because we have a relationship, a business relationship with these types of institutions who can be quite opaque and not very transparent.
Yeah.
So that's really my main recommendation for, going
and what
things.
What I would say is, even a lot of the information gathered in Ghana and probably across Africa, what we need to be aware is especially if you want market intelligence, it's good to work with organizations because even data out there, as to how reliable they are, you always need some level of verification and some level of interrogation of the data to fish things out. Because we realize, like we're saying, part of the culture can be a problem when it comes to, data gathering. Even when they are asking questions, people might give different answers for all sorts of reasons. And sometimes you even be surprised at the reasons that will make people give the wrong data.
Yeah.
Fears and misconceptions, and even culturally what they are thinking. They out of respect sometimes, out of not understanding what the data is going to be used for, and what they might either get out from giving that data or not get because of giving. There are all these things that goes into the data that is actually available for us to use. So it is very, very important.
And I was just going to add, again, feasibility studies is part of the whole equation, because if you can't depend on locally and readily available data or even get access to it, you have to collect your own.
Yes.
Now, most people, you shouldn't be trying to do a feasibility study. Like, you need an actual team.
Yes.
You see, so, with something like this, it really falls under the umbrella of, are you prepared to do what it takes to mitigate a risk? And a lot of the time, I don't think diasporans are. They want to, railroad their ideas and make it fit the market. And then you start complaining. But these are, and a feasibility study is not supposed to be cheap.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be of the highest quality.
Yeah.
It's not an expense. It's actually an investment.
Mm-hmm.
It's a risk mitigation investment, because I might have a great idea and I might be willing to invest 100K in it. But if I don't do a feasibility study, actually I have 100K to lose. So if I've spent 5,000, 10,000 on a feasibility study, I'm potentially saving myself 90,000.
And actually saving the business that you're trying to do. So that might actually help you to structure your business in such a way that it survives and it actually thrives. And often I find that a lot of diasporans come, and again, they are, it's like you're saying, they're looking at the feasibility studies as if they don't want to spend money on that, thinking, oh no, I don't need that, or I can do that by myself. But what we are highlighting is the fact that you can actually lose all your money because you skipped that part or you did it on the cheap. Again, think about it. That is part of your investment. Your feasibility studies should be a core of your investment, because that is what will actually, one of the pillars on which your business will be built on, one of the foundations, if you like. So don't do things on the cheap. And then I also find that people come, like, they speak to you and they're asking you questions, and it's like, and they expect you to sort of do stuff for them for free. Again, whatever you get for free, you need to remember it wouldn't help your business that much, because anything that's that cheap, you need to ask yourself whether it's actually properly done. And I think people need to sort of realize you need a team, and you have to recruit a team with the right speciality. Yeah.
In your team, you need someone that can do financial modeling.
Yes.
You need someone who has research experience, data gathering experience at the highest level.
Yeah.
Then you need someone who is actually a stakeholder in that area. So just you need it. It's not a one person thing.
Exactly.
It's a team thing.
Yeah.
You see.
Yeah. And what we are saying is, so with TGR Africa, what we've done is we actually have a team that looks into all these different aspects and actually does the market intelligence. So asking one person questions and hoping that you get answers that will help you do your feasibility studies is wrong. is what I'm trying to highlight. People think they can just do that and then use that to do a feasibility studies. That just won't be helpful for you.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anything else you want to add?
I mean, I think in general, again, how we look at risk is very important. Is that risk, again, is subjective. So first of all, we should accept that when we want to invest or do business in Africa, it's not a matter of whether we're saying it's risky or not risky. We're saying that, yes, Africa is riskier compared to the West. But we've also highlighted that there's a big correlation between risk and return. So the idea is that Africa offers very, very, very high returns. Now, if we understand these factors, the question then becomes, how do I mitigate against the risks that I'm aware of?
Yeah.
Because what I'm doing is I'm actually making my investments more safe. I'm making the business I want to start more safe. Because that upside is still there.
Yes.
If the risks and the returns are on par, but you can reduce the risk, then that's all the upside.
Yeah.
You've limited the downside.
Exactly.
And that's how we should approach doing business in Ghana and how we navigate the risks.
Exactly. Okay. So there you've heard it today. It's all about reducing the risks so that your upsides are even higher. It's not that Africa is too risky to invest in. It's not that Ghana is too risky to invest in. So that's it. Thank you very much, AG, for today's conversation. And also thank you to our cherished viewers and listeners. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to grab yourself a copy of our book, The Great Return, which is in all forms on Amazon. And if you're thinking or you're already doing business or investing in Ghana or the rest of Africa, then get in touch on our website, tgafrica.com, for us to discuss all forms of collaborations and partnerships, and also to book a consultation for business and investment advice and guidance, and also to check out all the other different things that we're doing at TGR Africa, so you can get involved. See you in the next episode.